Hello, my name is William Hurrell, and I'll be showing you a tutorial on how to animate a run cycle using the copy-paste method. I'll be using Richard Williams' run cycle as a reference, and you can get this just by googling run cycle in images. First of all, we'll create a session, and you can call it what you like, just make sure it's 24 FPS. The map that we're going to be using is Stage Big. Once the map's loaded, make sure you adjust the timeline for the shot just down to about 1 second. And then go into the graph editor and import HWM Scout. Then we want to right click, go down to Rig and load Rig Biped Simple. Then we'll open up the rig body and select rig root and drag 0 in the procedural across all the way. Then drag the root back to the wall along X, that's the red arrow, and then drag down so his feet are touching the ground. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up the character ready for animation, and we're just going to do a few things just to make it a bit easier to animate with. And we're going to parent the hands to the pelvis. To do this, we're going to drag pelvis down to the hands, and the reason that we do this is because right now you see I just parented his right hand to his pelvis, so then when I move the pelvis the arm stays with it, but the left hand isn't parented and so it stays there. The reason why we do this is because it's much easier to animate this hand swinging back and forth when it's keeping up with the pelvis, opposed to a hand that stays behind, and we have to keep that along matched up to the body. Also, we want to make the knees and the elbows a child of the root. So just drag root down to both the knees and the elbows. Then we want to just get the feet in position, so to do this we'll drag that across a bit. I'm going to set this to, let's see what -5 looks like. That looks good. And for this one, I'm going to set that to 5. Those values are calculated from the distance from the root. So that one is -5 and that one is 5. Then I just want to change the rotation, so I'm going to set that one to 80. I'll set this one to 100. The last thing that we're going to do is come across to the pelvis, and for position X, just set that to 0. And I'll explain why we do that later. Okay, so now we are ready to start blocking out the pose, and so using this we're just going to pose the scout into this first contact pose. So I'm just going to leave this here, and I'm going to make the scout look like that. I'm going to click the scout and I'm going to press M, and that will put a keyframe on every control. So then I'll click the pelvis, and for this you can see his head, it goes down and it goes up. There's a line drawn on top of his head and you can see that it goes down and then up there. So that's generally what his pelvis is going to do as well. So we can see that for contact, his pelvis isn't the lowest and it's not the highest. So it's somewhere in the middle. So I'm just going to pull that down a little bit. I think about here is good enough. I'm actually just going to round that off to 42 just to make it cleaner in the graph editor. I just drag those knee pole vectors out quite a distance away because they get a bit annoying up close. When you come to pose the leg or the foot, make sure that you have the pelvis and the hips in the right place before you finish the leg, because say if I was to spend a lot of time trying to get this leg straight, you see here his leg is straight. I don't pull it too far away because then it starts to snap and pop. So I want it to be straight. But if I spent a lot of time trying to get that straight and then I come and move these hips, you can see the foot is going to move. So make sure that you have the hips and the pelvis done before you finalize the foot position. And for this reference, you can see there's a line where his hips are and it's arcing downwards. For the last contact, it's arcing up. So from that I can see that his hips should be down along the Z rotation. Generally, for run cycles and walk cycles, the top half of the body will oppose the bottom half. So if his right foot is in front, his right hand will be behind. I'm just going to select all the Y rotations on his spine, and then I'll click them and I'll drag them across so we can get a bit of rotation there. So I'll just set them to 2. Okay, that's looking pretty cool for the first contact pose. Keep in mind we can come back and edit this slightly, although it's best not to edit the feet too much, but we still can. Okay, so I'm just going to hit M again just to make sure that everything has a keyframe on it. Then I'm going to go across to the next frame and hit M to key everything. I'm just going to... I'll drag the pelvis across a bit, just so I have room to work with this foot here. And you can see this foot, the heel's in the floor, so I'm just going to lift that up just a little bit. And then for this one, I need to make his foot flat on the ground. So we're working on the down pose now. I'm going to be using the square brackets here just to switch between these keyframes. And this is the down pose, remember? So we need his pelvis to be down. I'm not going to be working on the hands just yet, I'll do those last. So we're working on the first in between, and it's higher than the down, and maybe it's a bit lower than the contact. So if we go to the position Z in the graph editor, then we can get a visual representation of the motion path. And so we know that it's higher than the down but lower than the contact, so I'll just put that somewhere in between. So now it's the pass position. And his foot is changing here, so we'll just roll that up onto the heel of his foot. Once again, we can check Z here, and so this one is higher than the contact, but it's not as high as the up. So this needs to be higher than the contact, which it is, which is cool. And about now is a good time to get the distance for the X position. So let's see. That's why I wanted it to start off on 0. So the next keyframe, it's about 17. Might just pull that back a bit. It's a good idea to use these transform paths to see the motion of all the controls. So here we can see the transformation of the pelvis, and we can get the distance. The distance will represent the speed. So we want these to be an equal distance. So I'm just going to set this to 15, and since he's running, he should be moving at a constant speed. And so since the distance between these is 15, it should be 15 for every frame after. So then this one should be 30, so I'll just set that up to 30, and this one should be 45. And with that said, because he's going to be moving at a constant speed, we can go ahead and set the last pose for him. So I'm just going to put a keyframe on position X for his pelvis, and so I'm going to double this. Okay, so the number is 3, so I'm going to go to frame 6, and so I'm going to double the value at frame 3, so that's 45. So what I'm going to do is in this box for the value, I'm going to type times equals 2, and that's just going to obviously times that value by 2. And so now I know I've already got his X position in there. So I've already got X, and for Z, remember now we're working on up, on the up pose, and this says 5, but I'm on 4, but that's because this started off on 1, and I started off on 0. So we're on up, which is 5 here, but we're working on 4. So this needs to be higher, so I'm just going to set that to about, nope, I'm going to set that to, yeah, I'm going to set 46. And it looks like his leg is bent here, but that's just because we haven't rolled it yet. We might have, well, I might have gone too high with 46. Yeah, I think I have. I'm actually just going to drag the pass position down a bit to 43.5. That's a bit better. So now we're doing the second in between. And this one's a bit lower than the up position. Still higher than pass though. So I'll drag that to about in between them. I'll just go 44. I'll see what 44.5 looks like. Yeah, it looks alright. I might bring that down a bit later. And his hips here, you can see that's a straight line, so for Z, I'm just going to bring that up to 0. And finally, the last contact pose. Another reason why I wanted the pelvis to be X to start off on 0 was because from that it's easy to calculate the distance from the pelvis to the foot. So now the pelvis, the foot position on X was 22. I'm just going to say that 22 just to make that a bit easier. So it started off on 22 and the pelvis was 0. So now we know that the foot is 22 units in front of the pelvis. So on the contact position. So for the last contact position, we need this foot to be 22 units ahead of the pelvis. And the pelvis is at 90. So 22 on top of that. So what we could do is we could type 90 and then type plus equals 22, and that will give us that value. And we want it to be on the ground, so that's the Z position. we can still take more values from this foot. So Z 5.13. We can paste that in there, and it looks like his leg is straight there, like I said not to do, but that's because these hips and the pelvis. So Z position for pelvis here. Remember, this is the first contact for the pelvis, and this needs to be the same on the last contact. So there we go. That fixed that bend in the leg. And once again, this foot is on X minus 23.77. I'll just set that to minus 24. So the value is, it's 24 units behind the pelvis on contact. So on contact, this should be, before it was 90. Sorry. I'll set this to the same position as the pelvis, and then I'll type minus equals 24. And there we go. Now, this pose is pretty much a replica of that distance-wise. The feet are just switching around, so it's like that. Now we have all of these poses. I'm going to put in part 2, the copy and pasting method. It'll be much faster for now. Even though we've only done one step, we can still copy and paste values to get another step. So I'll put that into part 2, and if you head over there, then we can carry on.